Ready for the next story? Cake for enemies. Here is the one who's going to be reading. What? You're going to be reading.
Let me see it.
That colored is playbook.
Let's see here. Pastel para enemigos. Here, let go. I'll turn it like this. Parecía que era el verano perfecto. It looked like it was the perfect summer. Mi papá me ayudó a fabricar mi casa de árboles en el jardín. My dad helped me make a treehouse in the garden. Mi hermana estaba en un campamento de verano por 3 semanas. My sister was in a summer camp for 3 weeks. Y yo estaba en el mejor equipo de béisbol de la ciudad. And I was in the best baseball team in the city. Parecía que era el verano perfecto. It seemed like it was the perfect summer. Pero no lo era. But it was not.
Hi, baby.
Oh, we're reading a book. Do you want to read it? Oh, yeah. We're reading in Spanish. Do you like how that sounds? Todo iba bien hasta que Joaquín Rojas se mudó al barrio, a la casa vecina, a la de mi mejor amigo Esteban. Everything was going well until Joaquín Rojas moved to the neighborhood, to my next door house. To the house right next door to my best friend, Esteban. Joaquín Rojas no me caía bien. I did not like Joaquín Rojas. Se rió de mí cuando me ponchó en un partido de béisbol. He laughed at me when I put on a baseball jersey. Hizo una fiesta en su trampolín y no me invitó. He had a party on his trampoline and he did not invite me. Pero sí invitó a mi mejor amigo Esteban, but he did invite my best friend Esteban. Joaquín Rojas era la primera y única persona en mi lista de enemigos. Joaquín Rojas was the first and only person on my list of enemies. Antes de que se mudara a nuestro barrio, yo nunca había tenido una lista de enemigos. Before he moved to our neighborhood, I had never had a list of enemies. Pero tan pronto llegó, tuve que tenerla. But as soon as he got here, I had to make one. La puse en mi casa del árbol y a donde Joaquín Rojas no podía ir. I put it in my treehouse where Joaquín Rojas could not go. And his list says, enemigo número 1, Joaquín Rojas. Enemy number 1, Joaquín Rojas. Papá sabía de cosas como los enemigos. Dad knew about things like enemies. Me dijo que también había tenido enemigos cuando era de mi misma edad. He told me that he also had had enemies when he was my same age. Pero él conocía una manera de librarse de ellos, but he knew of a way to free himself from them. Yo le pedí que me dijera cómo. I asked him to tell me how. ¿Qué te digo? A ver, ¿que te diga cómo? Me to tell you how? No, te mostraré cómo. No, I will show you how, dijo, he said. Sacó un viejo libro de recetas de la alacena de la cocina. He took out an old book of recipes from the cupboard in the kitchen. Dentro del libro había un pedazo de papel desgastado con algo escrito que casi no se podía leer. In the book, there was a small piece of paper, really worn out, that had something written that I could almost not even read. Papá alzó el papel y leyó. He got the paper and read. Pastel para enemigos, dijo satisfecho. Cake for enemies, he said, satisfied and happy. Move it. We're not looking at gum. You can come back here. Tal vez estarás preguntando, ¿qué es eso de pastel para enemigos? You might be asking yourself, what is this about cake for enemies? A mí también me gustaría saberlo. I would also like to know this. Pero papá me dijo que la receta era tan secreta que no podía revelarla. But Dad told me that the recipe was so secret that he couldn't even show me. Pensé que tendría algo que ver con magia. I thought it had something to do with magic. Le rogué que me dijera algo, lo que fuera. I asked him to tell me whatever it was, anything at all. Te diré una cosa, me dijo. El pastel para enemigos es la manera más rápida que conozco de librarse de un enemigo. I will tell you one thing, he said. The cake for enemies is the fastest way that I know of to free yourself from an enemy. Bueno, eso me puso a pensar. Well, this got me thinking. ¿Qué tipo de cosas? Cosas horribles. Le pondría yo a un pastel para un enemigo? What type of things, horrible things, would I put in a cake for enemies? Le traje a papá unas hierbas malas del jardín, pero él negó con la cabeza. I brought Dad some bad, like maybe weeds, bad herbs from the garden, but he shook his head no. Le traje gusanos y piedras, pero él dijo que no necesitaría eso. Le di un chicle que había mascado desde por la mañana. Me lo devolvió enseguida. I brought him pebbles and rocks, but he said that this was not necessary. I gave him a chewed up piece of gum that I'd chewed up that morning, but he gave it right back to me. Oh, and he brought him worms, gusanos. Salí a jugar solo. I left to go play by myself outside. Hice lanzamientos al aro de baloncesto hasta que el balón cayó en el techo y se quedó allí. I made shots to the basketball rim until the ball fell on the roof and stayed there. Lancé un boomerang que nunca volvió. I threw a boomerang that never came back. Y durante todo ese tiempo oí que papá cortaba y mezclaba y licuaba los ingredientes del pastel para enemigos. And during this entire time, I heard Dad cutting, mixing, and liquidating the ingredients of the cake for enemies. Parecía que, al fin de cuentas, el verano no iba a ser tan malo. But it looked like, at the end of it all, this summer was not going to be so bad. El pastel para enemigos iba a ser horrible. The cake for enemies was going to be horrible. Traté de imaginarme lo mal que olería, o peor, lo mal que se vería. Pero mientras andaba por el jardín buscando mariquitas, olía algo pero que muy rico. I tried to imagine how bad that cake would smell. The worst that there could ever possibly be. But while I was walking in the garden looking for butterflies? No. Ladybugs? I smelled something very, and I mean very delicious. What the heck? Y me pareció que el olor venía de nuestra cocina. And it looked to me like the smell was coming from our kitchen. Eso me confundió un poco. This confused me a little. Fui a preguntarle a papá qué pasaba. El pastel para enemigos no debería oler así de rico. Pero papá es muy listo. I went to ask Dad what was up. The cake for enemies should not be smelling so good. But Dad is pretty smart. Sí, el papel para enemigos huele mal. But tu enemigo nunca se lo comerá. He said, if the cake for your enemies smells bad, your enemy will never eat it. Dijo, y entonces supe de verdad que él ya había hecho antes un pastel para enemigos. That's what my dad said. And then, in that minute, I knew, truly, that Dad had already made a cake for enemies before. Because he knew the tricks. The trick is to make it smell so good. Because if you make it smell bad, your enemy will never eat it. La alarma del reloj sonó y papá se puso los guantes y sacó el pastel del horno. Nope, you cannot look ahead. No. Parecía un pastel común y corriente. Se veía muy rico. Ya me estaba dando cuenta de cómo sería el engaño. The timer went off and Dad put on his oven mitts and took the cake out of the oven. It looked like a regular cake. It looked so good. I was already noticing how tricky this was going to be for my enemy. Aunque yo seguía sin entender cómo funcionaría el pastel para enemigos.
It actually was a really, really yummy cake.
So far, maybe there's poison inside, I don't know. Even though I kept not understanding how it would work, the cake for enemies. ¿Qué les pasaría a los enemigos? What would happen to the enemies? Quizás haría que se les cayera el pelo o que tuvieran mal aliento. Maybe it would make their hair fall out or give them bad breath.
Ha.
Quizás haría llorar a los abusones. Maybe it would make them cry. I don't know what abusones means. Looks like abuses. Maybe it would make them cry about what they did bad to you. Le pregunté a papá, pero no sirvió de nada. I asked Dad, but it didn't help at all. No me lo quiso decir. He refused to tell me. Pero mientras el pastel se enfriaba, me dijo que yo debía hacer algo. But while the cake was cooling off, he told me that I should do something. Hay una parte del pastel para enemigos que yo no puedo hacer, me susurró. There's a piece of the cake for enemies that I can't make, he told me, he whispered. Para que funcione, deberás pasar un día entero con tu enemigo. Y lo que es peor, debes ser muy amable con él. Eso no es fácil, pero es la única manera de que funcione el pastel